This is Algebra 1, Lesson 4, and we're covering 4F and 4G in this video. We're going to talk first about symbols of equality and inequality. If you had this statement, 5 plus 2, and then you had 7, what could you put in between those sides? What could you put in the box that would show the relationship between 5 plus 2 and 7? Well, 5 plus 2 is 7, so they are equal. And that's what this part of the lesson talks about, is when we use an equal sign. And I'm sure you probably all have seen that before. But do you know the next symbol? 5 plus 2 compared to 11. 5 plus 2 is 7, and that is not equal to 11. So here's how you write not equal to. You draw an equal sign, and you put a slash through it. So that's section 4F. 4G, basic operations. Now, the operations are adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing. Those are your basic operations for arithmetic and for what we're studying for algebra. Okay, and you'll be learning to use those same operations in algebraic expressions and equations. So the first review we're going to do is for addition. 2 plus 3 is equal to 5. And you know what those parts are called. When you add two numbers to get another number, you call those two numbers the addends. So this is an addend, and then this right here is also an addend. Okay, and then we have the plus sign in between it. We know what the plus sign is. Equals to, and then the answer. The answer to an addition is called a sum. So we have addends being added to give us a sum. Now there's a question here to the side. What is the sum, or the answer to an addition, of 0 and a number? Well, let's try a few examples. If we don't know that answer, we can try a few. 4 plus 0, that would just be 4. 15 plus 0, that would just be 15. So can we generalize that? What is the sum of 0 and a number? Well, it would just be the number, right? And here's a symbol for number, an abbreviation. All right, for subtraction. For subtraction, we have the first number you call the minuend. I always forget this name and have to look it up. The second number we're going to call the subtrahend. And then the answer to a subtraction problem is a difference. And these are the things that we end up using a lot of, like back here with sum. You're going to have some problems where they want you to find the sum, like I said, sum here. So you have to know it's the answer to an addition. Or here, if they tell you something about the difference, they're wanting to know, you have to know the answer to a subtraction. And then, of course, in a subtraction, we use a minus sign. Now, in multiplication, we have factors. So we've got the 4 is a factor, and the 3 is a factor, and then we have the multiplication symbol in between, and then the answer to a multiplication problem is a product. Now, I wrote out the side here some other ways you can write multiplication. Here I use the dot. That's typically what we see, but you can also see one of them written in parentheses, and that shows that we're going to be multiplying 4 times 3. You could have both of them in parentheses. You could have both of them in parentheses and then there's a dot in between it. I don't see that as much, but sometimes people write it that way. Now, the way you first started multiplying, you used this x. But since we're in algebra, we're going to kind of get away from using the x, and we're usually going to write it like this, or like this, or like this. Those are going to be the 3 most common ways that you're going to see a multiplication written. Another question here, what is the product of 1 and a number? The product, okay. Well, we just said that the product is the answer to a multiplication problem. So when you multiply 1 and a number, just made up some examples here. 4 times 1 is 4, and 15 times 1 is 15. So if you multiply 1 and a number, you're going to get that number. That's your answer there. Now the next operation that we're going to talk about, actually we're going to have one more about multiplication. What is the product of 0 and a number? So the last one was product of 1 and a number, product and 0 and a number. When you multiply by 0, you get 0. So the product of 0 and a number is going to be 0. Okay? All right, and then the last operation for arithmetic that we're going to talk about is division. And I think I mentioned this in the last video of different ways to write division. We can write it like a fraction here. 10 divided by 5 is equal to 2. And you know how to name the parts of this. You have a numerator, and you have a denominator. And then you have your answer to a division problem, which is a quotient. And then you can, over here, they have slightly different names. The first number is called the dividend. And then we've got our division symbol. And then we've got the divisor. That's what we're dividing by. And then the answer, again, same as this other one, you've got a quotient. Okay, so that's typically going to be this number that you're going to need to use and be able to recognize. So, and we'll learn more about division and division by 0 specifically a little bit later.